Hello everyone, it's time for today's session of readings from the Bhagavad Gita, and the verses for today are verses 40 and 41. And before I begin, as is the beautiful tradition of our ancient civilization, I begin with this verse, offering my obeisances and seeking the blessings of the spiritual masters. Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, and the spiritual master opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. And so now we are ready for verses 40 and 41. And before I begin, a quick recap of the last few verses that we covered. Arjuna gives his third reason to Lord Krishna in the verses that we read yesterday, that why he doesn't want to fight, why at the last moment he has decided that he is not interested in fighting. Because as a Kshatriya, he is concerned with protection of dharma, and although a Kshatriya is not supposed to refuse to battle or to gamble, nevertheless it is important not to be blinded by what the effects of that war or that gambling match will be. And he could clearly see that if this dynastic warfare finishes the Kshatriyas, the elders and the Brahmins, then society would be, it would contribute to degradation of society. By removing the Vedic kings, by destroying the Vedic kings, the Vedic culture and traditions would be destroyed. And when one says the Vedic culture and system would be destroyed, it meant that the material traditions which maintain the family honor and the traditions that train the young for their material and spiritual welfare, and to protect women from that would all be affected, and offering of sacrificial offerings at particular times for the ancestors, that will also be stopped. And all this will affect not just the ancestors but the current and the future generations. The ancestors would not be receiving their the sacrificial offerings that are important for their welfare, and then the women and children would be left unprotected, and so they would degrade, and then there would be like Varna Shankara, unwanted progeny, and that would create these unwanted progeny, unwanted children, the kind of problems that they will cause to society because they are not trained, they don't get training, or because the women themselves don't have the training to train them in a holistic manner, body, mind and spirit, for their harmonious development. And then the future, the present is affected, and if the present is affected, then the future is also affected. So he doesn't want to fight. This is the reason that he gives. And that is why he says that on the death of elder members, family traditions of purification, because human life is meant for purification of the consciousness and to gradually elevating it towards the highest consciousness, that would stop, and then the younger members of the family would become irreligious. The men with the young children, untrained, they would grow up to become, frivolous and well, and not knowing what to do, what not to do, lacking in discrimination, and women would also degrade, and that will lead to, and when women degrade, it will lead to further degradation of society. So now we come to verse 40 of the first chapter. Adharmabhavaat Krishna pradushyanti kulastriya Srishu dustashu vasneya jayate varna shankara. So when Strishu is women and being polluted, Vashneya is descendant of Vrishni. So all these words by which Lord Krishna is addressed have their own significance. So he says, O descendant of Vrishni, if the women of the, when irreligion is prominent in the family, O Krishna, the women of the family become polluted, and from the degradation of women, O descendant of Vrishni, comes unwanted progeny. In the purport, Lord Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada explains, good population in human society is the basic principle for peace, prosperity, and spiritual progress in life. And so ultimately, what is society? It is the arrangement of individuals, and a particular arrangement of individual according to certain values that people hold, in a certain esteem. And if the population is good, then that society, well-trained population, that society will be peaceful, prosperous, and there will be spiritual progress. The Varnashrama religious principles were so designed that the good population would prevail in society for the general spiritual progress of state and community. Such population depends on the chastity and faithfulness of its womanhood. As the children are very prone to be misled, women similarly require protection by the elder members of the family. By being engaged in various religious practices, women will not be misled into adultery. According to Chanakya Pandita, women are generally not very intelligent, Prabhupada writes here, and not very trustworthy. So the different family traditions of religious activities should always engage them, and thus their chastity and devotion will give birth to a good population eligible for participating in the Varnashrama system. On the failure of such Varnashrama system, naturally women become free to act and mix with men, and thus adultery is indulged in at the risk of unwanted population, and irresponsible men also provoke adultery in society, and thus unwanted children flood the human race at the risk of war and pestilence. So he's saying that if women are degraded and become adulterous, then there are unwanted progeny, or if there are progeny, they are not well trained enough to understand the principles of life, and therefore ultimately unwanted children grow up to be degraded human beings, and the human race becomes polluted, and that when the human beings become polluted, that's when there is war, conflict, and pestilence in society. That is what is explained, that is what is written in the purport. And here Gurijana Dasa explains that Krishna called Arjuna Partha here. Krishna is being addressed as Varshneya, and Krishna addresses Arjuna as Partha. So the significance here is Krishna calls Arjuna Partha to indicate to him, to remind him that he's of Kshatriya heritage. So he should not, behave in a manner that is not, that does not behove a Kshatriya. And then In the same verse, Arjuna calls Krishna Varsneya, and that is descendant of Vrishni. And by this, he wants Arjuna to think how he would feel if the Vrishni dynasty were on a verge of destruction. So he's trying to, the Vrishni dynasty is very obviously close to Vrishni is the dynasty of Lord Krishna. So if the dynasty were to degrade, if his family traditions were to degrade, how would you feel? He's kind of asking Lord Krishna, and that is in turn because all the seniors are not there, and then it leads to untrained populace, which will lead to successive degradation in the consciousnness of the population, and that will lead to war and conflict and pestilence. So then, how would he feel if his dynasty were to degrade? Then, so that is the significance of the word Varsneya. That's why Lord Krishna is being addressed here as Varsneya. And then 41, it says, Shankaro naraka yaiva kulagnanam kulasya cha patanti pitaro hi esam lupto pindodaka kriyaha. So then an increase of unwanted population certainly causes hellish life both for the family and those who destroy the family tradition. Then the ancestors of such corrupt families also fall down because the performances of offering them food and water are entirely stopped. So when pollution occurs in the society, because the elders are not there, those who transmit the the traditions and teach them the purificatory processes, when they are not there, and the Kshatriyas who are upholders of justice, they are not there, then what it does, it leads to the unwanted, because the population is unwanted, born out of adultery, and therefore the root itself becomes like polluted. Then at the root, at the source, there is pollution. Then what happens is it causes a hellish life for both the family, and the family traditions are also destroyed. And when family traditions are destroyed, not only are the immediate, the present affected and the future affected, but also the ancestors become affected, because nobody bothers about tradition, and therefore the process of offering them food and water through various sacrificial activities, that is also stopped, and that causes again overall, and when they are in trouble, then again the family is also in trouble. So then therefore in the Prabhupada explains, according to the rules and regulations of fruitive activities, there is a need to offer periodical food and water to the forefathers of the family. This offering is performed by worship of Vishnu, because eating the remnants of food offered to Vishnu can deliver one from all kinds of sinful reactions. Sometimes the forefathers may be suffering from various types of sinful reactions, and sometimes some of them cannot even acquire a gross material body and are forced to remain in subtle bodies as ghosts. Thus, when remnants of prasadam food are offered to forefathers by descendants, the forefathers are released from ghostly or other kinds of miserable life. Such help rendered to the forefathers is a family tradition, and those who are not in devotional life are required to perform such rituals. One who is engaged in devotional life, however, is not required to perform such actions. Simply by performing devotional service, one can deliver hundreds and thousands of forefathers from all kinds of misery. It is stated in the Bhagavatam, Canto 11, Chapter 5, verse 41. Devarshi bhutapta nrinam pitrinam na kinkaro nayam rini charajan sarvatmana yah sharanam sharanyam gato mukundam pariritta kartum. So anyone who has taken shelter, translation, of the lotus feet of Mukunda, the giver of liberation, giving up all kinds of obligations, and is taken to the path in all seriousness, owes neither duties nor obligations to the demigods, sages, general living entities, family members, humankind, or forefathers. Such obligations are automatically fulfilled by performance of devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the spiritual significance of offering food and water to the forefathers of the family is being explained here in the purport. And so Prabhupada says that when prasadam, that is when these ceremonies for the forefathers are performed, then they are released from ghostly or other kinds of miserable life. And such help rendered to forefathers is a family tradition. And those who are not in devotional service, they are required to perform such sacrament, to follow these traditions, to help the forefathers to kind of be released from any kind of miseries that they may be suffering from in their afterlife. And then, however, it is said that those who, because the forefathers may have committed different kinds of sins, and because of the various types of sins, there may be various types of sinful reactions that they have to suffer, and some may even, some may be so sinful that they cannot even acquire a gross material body and are forced to remain in subtle bodies as ghosts. So by offering prasadam through these ceremonies, which are done to worship Vishnu, then what happens is that the forefathers are gradually released from their miserable conditions, and especially those who do not regularly are involved in the worship of Vishnu. It is definitely recommended that these traditions are followed for the welfare of the forefathers. But however, it is clarified that those who are constantly engaged in devotional life are not required to perform such actions, because simply by performing devotional service by being committed to it on a full-time basis, they can deliver hundreds and thousands of forefathers from all kinds of misery. So their constant connection with the divine, with the Lord, means that their forefathers are also benefited. Then Prabhupada goes on to explain that in the why that is so, by quoting a verse here from the Bhagavatam, which says Devarshi bhutapta nrinam pritrinam. So again, I'll not read the verse, but I'll just reread the translation. Anyone who has why they don't have to perform, it's not obligatory upon them to perform such ceremonies or such traditions, because anyone who has taken shelter of the Lord, lotus feet of Mukunda, they are not the giver of liberation. So here Krishna is being addressed as Mukunda. So liberation is in the hands only of Mukunda. Worship of other demigods may provide a lot of things, but if the ultimate liberation of the soul, nobody has that capacity except the creator of the universe, and he's being addressed here as Mukunda, the giver of liberation. And so anyone who has taken shelter of the lotus feet of Mukunda, giving up all kinds of obligations, has taken the path in all seriousness, owes neither duties nor obligations to the demigods, sages, general living entities, family members, because in this verse says that when we are, we are always indebted to, for whatever we have, to demigods, because demigods are the suppliers of the, are considered to be in charge of the life support systems that we require on the planet, like rain, sun, then water, everything. They're in charge of particular demigods. They are the administrators of of this universe, and so we owe them a certain, we are indebted to them, we are obliged to sages, because they give us, like spiritual guidance and facilitate our spiritual upliftment. General living entities, because we are all somehow no man is sufficient, no man is an island sufficient in himself, and so therefore we are kind of all interlinked. So all general living entities, we are indebted, and we are definitely indebted to our family members, because whatever we are, the nurturing, the nourishing is received from family members, humankind or forefathers. And we are indebted to humankind in general, because as a human society, everyone is of some kind or the other service to one another, interlinked, interconnection. There is mutuality. And finally to forefathers, because whatever we have ultimately comes from our forefathers. If it is not in terms of material, where it could be, it's our genes, then our the kind of people we are, everything actually comes from our forefathers. So we are indebted to our forefathers, our training, traditions. So therefore it is important to return that, and the cycle of life is always about receiving and also of giving. So therefore that is then fulfilled. But when one is on devotional service to the source, then ultimately it's it's by being devoted to by offering water to the root, all the other branches are nourished. That is the kind of principle here. So with that, we come to the end of the readings, the quota of readings for today. Thank you very much for listening, and I'm sorry that this comes a little late today, and see you all tomorrow. Thank you very much. Have a blessed day.